Hi, I'm Rick Yampert, and I'm going to talk about modern paganism and how I found my way onto that spiritual path. What's a pagan? Uh, Most of us probably heard the term in school when it used to refer 1600 years ago basically to any practitioner of a religion other than Christianity. So back in ancient Rome, there were Christians, there were pagans. So it was almost synonymous with non-Christian. And originally the Latin word paganus meant country dweller. Today, what's called modern paganism or neo-paganism, there are three main tenets of paganism, and keep in mind, this is my definition, as I'll talk about soon. Paganism is not a religion of the book. Buddhism, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, they all have ancient texts that form the basis of much of their religious beliefs and practices today. That's not the case with modern paganism or ancient paganism. Those three strains of pagan belief basically are: it's a nature religion, it's centered on the earth and the belief that divinity is expressed through the natural world. A second aspect is that modern paganism, like the old paganism, is polytheistic. Specifically and most importantly, myself and almost every pagan I know believes in a divine feminine aspect as well as a divine masculine aspect. That is, the goddess as well as the god, or the goddesses, plural, as well as the gods, plural. And the third main tenet of modern paganism is, for lack of a better term, magic. Whoa, I know, scary term or kind of freaky term. Now, under the umbrella of modern paganism, you will find people like me. I self-identify as pagan, just pagan. But also modern witches and followers of the particular strain of witchcraft known as Wicca are also part of the modern pagan umbrella. And also Druids, practically any practitioner of an earth-based religion with some polytheistic elements is going to come under that broad umbrella of paganism. Now, that's not such a strange thing to admit to that broad umbrella. I mean, if you think about the faiths I just mentioned, there are so many strains of Buddhism, Islam. There's the two main very divergent threads. Same with Judaism and Christianity. There's lots of different practices and beliefs that come under those broad terms. And it's the same with paganism. So we will explore. Oh, I should mention, behind me, you can see my church. Yeah, quotes, unquotes. The woods behind my home in Palm Coast. I'm blessed to live with wilderness behind me, and it's very much a part of my pagan spiritual path that I have chosen to live here. So we will explore all these, and I will talk about how myself, how I came to follow this pagan life. Well, the rain has stopped, so I moved closer to my church, the woods behind my home. So those three main tenets of paganism: The first one, it's a nature-based religion. What does that mean? Well, back in the days when my late wife Cheryl was still in this world in healthy body, the Jehovah's Witnesses would come around occasionally and knock on the door, and I would always invite them in to talk with the unspoken assumption on my part that they're coming to my place. I'm going to talk about my spiritual path as much as they talk about theirs. Even though paganism universally, and including myself, we do not proselytize. Find your own path, whatever works for you. But anyway, the Jehovah's would come over and Cheryl would say, Rick, you don't know who this is. You're just, and anyway. But I would invite them in, and one thing I would always do is take them to the back patio and show them one of Cheryl's plants, which this is right here. And I would explain to them, I would literally say, this is my religion. There is earth, the soil and the plant. There is sunlight comes down, rain comes down. There's the air around. And out of all that, earth, air, fire, and water, we have life. So I don't need teachings of a book to convey the magical, mystical, spiritual quality of this world. I step into my backyard and look at the wilderness behind, or I look at plants, or I look at the turn of the seasons, what we pagans call the wheel of the year, and we see divinity. We see divine presence in this simple act of the earth regreening itself each spring, going dormant in the autumn and winter months. And then what happens? Every year I've been on this planet, come springtime, wow, rebirth, regreenery. So that is, paganism is a spiritual path of engagement, of experience. Again, it's not a religion of the book. A common metaphor used by myself and a lot of my fellow pagans and Wiccans and witches is, well, in polite company, you'll see it described as, well, it's like a roller coaster. You can tell somebody what it's like to ride a roller coaster, but until you do it, mere words really don't convey the experience. But some of us use the metaphor of sexual passion. You can tell somebody what it's like for you, but really you have to experience it in order to really grasp the experience and grasp what it's all about. And that's the way it is with our pagan path. So we find divinity in what we witness. There's the crows back. Okay, hey. I'm writing a book on crows and ravens, crow magic, raven magic. So anyway, that's another lecture for another time. Yes, they come visit me daily. That's another part of my pagan path, is connection to the, to all the creatures. That is, again, evidence of this divine mystery. And our pagan path, my pagan path, is about exploring this divine mystery that I see in nature, that I see evidence of. And I want to know more about that mystery. As we say in paganism, it's about parting the veil that separates this mundane, workaday world with the magic and mysteries of spirit that most of us sense or intuit is there. So. Let's talk about that second main tenet of paganism, polytheistic, which basically there's a goddess as well as a god that we pagans and witches and druids and Wiccans recognize. It does kind of bother me, and I wonder how many people have this experience when talking about spiritual or religious matters with someone, and they say, it's just self-evident. It's like, well, okay. But when it comes to the goddess, this divine feminine essence, I just want to say, it's self-evident that there is a feminine power or essence or energy. Energy is a good word. There's this feminine energy that permeates the universe as much or more than masculine energy, really. I mean, life itself revolves around male meeting female. Life happens, and we see that in my church, in the flora and fauna, crows and trees and plants, and we see it in our human life too. Now, when I say that, I want to say, and this is a topic for another time, I guess, but when I say life revolves around those male-female energies, I am certainly including the LGBTQ communities, the transgender communities. Life emanates in many ways. So when I say male, female, I don't mean to be so binary, but for this conversation, please keep in mind it's not that rigid binary. But the goddess, we have, quote unquote, the patriarchal religions that we're all familiar with. I just, and other pagans, I see so much evidence of this feminine energy in the universe, and a part of my pagan path is wanting to explore that and understand it and have communion. That's a key word with me, communion. Communion with goddess and God, and with the mysteries that are apparent in nature. So we'll talk more about goddess and God in a little bit, coming up. All right, let's talk about that third main tenet of paganism, modern paganism, magic. That's kind of a, I don't know, magic's kind of a happy, nice term. Magic happens, you'll see bumper stickers. But when people start realizing that my fellow pagans, the witches and Wiccans, that they do spells, whoa, spooky term, spells. What does that mean? Does it mean like Samantha in that 60s TV show Bewitched, where she does this with the nose and suddenly the house cleaning is done? Is that what magic and spell work is? Or you cast a spell to attract a lover or to whatever? Not really, but kind of, sort of. What do we mean about magic? What do we mean about spell work? I've used that word energies. And basically, spell work, and I myself practice what I call shamanic techniques. And spell work and shamanic techniques, in my mind, are very interrelated. But it's basically, when we say we do, what do witches and pagans do? For me, it is practicing techniques that Well, let me say this. One of my favorite writer-thinkers, Colin Wilson, one of his main theses is that we humans are trapped by what he calls our robot mind. It's what the Buddhists call the monkey mind. Monkey mind is always chattering. We think serious, deep thoughts or moments of passion or joy, and then the monkey mind pops in and says, oh, I want a chocolate donut, or something utterly ridiculous. And in Colin Wilson, when he says the robot mind, it's very easy for us to let the robot take over the steering wheel of our daily lives. So when I say shamanic techniques, that doesn't mean you have to go spend 6 weeks in an intensive study under some true shaman in Siberia or South America or in Native America, although nothing wrong with that, believe me. But spell work, well, I'll talk about shamanic techniques that I use. They are a way to, what I term, alter one's consciousness, A-L-T-E-R, in order to alter, A-L-T-A-R. We alter our consciousness so that we can alter, A-L-T-A-R, our consciousness. And basically that's just a way of saying that the robot goes through day-by-day stuff, but even simple practices can bring us closer to the divine energies that are flowing right here in the woods. You heard the crows earlier. That's part of that divine mystery. They recognize human faces. If you read my book coming out in a year, you'll get some insights onto these fantastic, intelligent creatures. Shamanic techniques that I use, they're not woo-woo or require intense years of study, although it helps the more you do it. It's why it's called a practice. But playing music, I play sitar, I play Native American flutes. Creating any art is going to take you into a certain mindset. And in fact, every religion in the world has creation tales. So anytime we create, we are imitating the gods and goddesses. We are creating. It's creation. Art is a magical practice. Drumming, drum circles. Drum circles will induce these trance states where suddenly you're not, the monkey mind is subdued, and you hear the patterns of the drums and the rhythms, and it's been shown that those have a physiological effect on what's happening in theta waves in the brain and all that. But suddenly the robot is over here, and you may start having these visions, and it's like, where's this coming from? These visions, these kind of mystical, cosmological visions. Drumming, trance work, tarot card readings. Tarot cards are 78 cards with very symbolic imagery on them, and they get a bad reputation among some folks. Ooh, it's a tool of the devil. No, it's just 78 paintings that have a lot of symbology and myth in them, and looking at those images and contemplating them. It's just like you can do a tarot reading by going to a museum. If you contemplate these symbolic images, they're going to transport you out of your world into this world that you haven't contemplated yet or in some time. And if you see a tarot card with circles or horse or the sun or moon or whatever, all those have mythological meanings. What Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, you'll be tapping into that. Other shamanic techniques, just everyday meditation. Alan Watts, the well-known British philosopher, thinker who wrote so eloquently about Eastern spiritual pathways. He referred to what he called a walking meditation. He walks, he thinks, insights happen. So anyway, so that's the magic part. Now, witches and Wiccans, they will, quote unquote, cast spells. And what is that? I've done some of that in my past, but it didn't really connect with me as a major part of my spiritual path. But casting a spell is just doing physical things. You set up an altar, you pour water into a chalice, and maybe whatever. You will chant certain words or whatever. And all that is designed to dissolve the robot mind so that your mind is more open. What the Eastern mystics call the third eye will open, and you will simply begin to think and see kind of in a visionary way, in ways that you haven't seen before. So if you're working a spell, it's not so much to get someone to fall in love with you or to hoodoo the job where you just interviewed, to hoodoo them into hiring you. It's to change your perspective and to make you think and see things in ways that you wouldn't have seen before. And suddenly it's like you will have insights. It's like, I haven't seen the world in this way before. And this new way of seeing it is going to benefit me and benefit others if I can somehow share that knowledge. So whole books have been written about spells and shamanic techniques and shamans and all that. So I'm just basically touching upon that. So now let's talk about my own spiritual path. How does somebody become a pagan? Stay tuned. Here's just a brief glimpse of my pagan altar in my home. So yes, every item on my altar, like the altars of all pagans and witches, and I assume other religions, every item has some sort of mythological, mystical, symbolic meaning, personal in some cases. I have rocks and branches that I picked up on my trip to Ireland, connecting to my roots in that country, and I'm going to talk about that in just a bit. And here is Cernunnos, the antlered god of the ancient Celts, and there's another image of Cernunnos, and there's yet another image of Cernunnos, and right above my altar is one of my Mr. Crow artworks. So we will talk about more of this in just a moment. I didn't even realize as I was filming video of my altar, which I know it wasn't the best lighting inside my house, but hopefully you got an idea. But while I was filming it, the crow sounds you heard and you hear now are actually the crows that come to visit me each day. Bella and Bola, the crow couple. Anyway, so yeah, those aren't sound effects. Those are the crows. But I wanted to give you a better look at the Cernunnos plaque that sits on my altar. This is from what's called the Gun Distraught Cauldron, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. It was a cauldron fashioned by Celtic people about 2,000 years ago, and it was ritually cut into a number of pieces and tossed into a peat bog in Denmark, and it was found about 100 years ago. And it has all these fantastic mythological images, a lot of animal imagery, and for me the most striking image is this god who is sitting in a Buddha pose, which has baffled historians and religious scholars. They're still wondering how that happened, that a Celtic entity came to be sitting like that. And of course he's got antlers, and as you can see, the antlers very much mirror the stag that's beside him, and on the other side is a boar, and he's holding a serpent with ram's horns. So back in the late 1980s, I was raised, in the 60s and 70s, I was raised in a household that was basically not so religious. And when we say that in America, what do we mean? We really mean not Christian. When we say not religious, it's the dominant religion in our culture, in our society here in the U.S. And every once in a while, my dad would say, "Oh, you kids go to church." So my two brothers and I, we'd have to go 2 or 3 weeks, but never connected with Christianity. We were in no way raised as Christians. In my teen years, high school years, I began to, think about things. And one of the things that to me was a big conundrum is, why do the innocent suffer? And for me and others, I would soon find out, Christianity doesn't answer that just very serious, very deep question. It doesn't, and that's a lecture for another day. And if you ever come to my home and see my home library, you will see I have several shelves devoted to what's called the problem of evil. Now, so that kind of just made me think, okay, Christianity doesn't, but there were other reasons, so I didn't connect to Christianity. And then one day in the late 80s, I would, like a lot of people, I'd go on nature walks and trails, and I grew up in northern New Mexico, in Los Alamos, a very magical place. We would go climbing the ruins of the ancient Pueblo people about 3 miles from my house in Los Alamos. This beautiful landscape. You could see the mountains, the San de Cristo, the Blood of Christ Mountains, that's the name of them in Spanish, way across the valley. And these ancient people who literally lived among the cliff dwellings. So a very magical upbringing there. Even as a child, it's like, wow, this is a special place. And it's very barren, but yet there's life there, and it's out in the middle of nature. So in the late 80s or so, I've, like a lot of us, I'd walk through a forest or something, I'd have that, this is so nice feeling. And then I came across this image somewhere in a book, Cernunnos, and it resonated with me. It was like, what's going on here? Some human with antlers, and he's among animals. What's up with that? Well, did a little research, and obviously I found out that Cernunnos is a lord of the animals. That's what most religious scholars and Celtic scholars describe him as. There's not a lot of historical, meaning written record about Cernunnos. In fact, his name is found on only one carving from ancient Roman carving, actually. But I connected with Cernunnos, and I wanted to find out more, and that's where um, I started finding out about modern pagans and Wiccans. Now, for around that time, moved to Florida in 1990, and just like in Los Alamos, New Mexico, I would walk out in the woods and see foxes scurrying about, and feral pig mamas would snort and say, "Stay away from my babies," and you see black racer snakes, and occasionally you'd see an alligator in a swampy area sunning himself over there on a peninsula. And it was like, wow, there's this whole other existence that's, yet it's not other, it's our home, it's planet Earth. So I started feeling that connection, and then I came across James Lovelock's Gaia hypothesis, and then also there was a pagan named Oberon Zell Ravenheart. His Gaia thesis is that they both use the term deep ecology, and Oberon very expressly saw the sacred feminine as a key part of this deep ecology. And basically his Gaia thesis is that the earth itself is one huge living organism, and we are part of that. And that resonated with me. And then when I found out that there is actually a spiritual path, that is the basis of it, that there is this divine female essence, that nature is sacred, that it's a part of our lives, but there's mysteries there, that if we could have this communion with it, it would lead to both wisdom and ecstatic joy. And that this modern paganism also recognized a divine energy, a kinship with nature as expressed by Cernunnos. And I had found my spiritual home. So Gaia, which is the ancient Greek personification or goddess of the earth, goddess as earth goddess, Gaia is my goddess, and Cernunnos is my god. Now I have a strong rational streak that goes along with my mystical side. And my late wife Cheryl would always be fascinated by what I call my rat prag brain, rational pragmatic brain, which is in conflict with my misty into brain, my mystical intuitive brain. So I am basically an agnostic about, is Gaia an actual divine feminine being? Is Cernunnos an actual divine masculine being? I certainly believe that their energies exist, that their essence exists, and that's real. We have this, in this rat prag brain world, especially in Western society, when we say something is real, it's something we have to feel like we have to touch or be able to hold or mold or see with our everyday eyesight. But dreams are real. The imagination is real. Scientists study visions and dreams. So the rationalists will say, oh, that's a dream, dismissively, but dreams are real. We dream every night. They are a different sort of reality, what a lot of us pagans and others call non-ordinary realities. So I want to alter, A-L-T-E-R, my consciousness. I want to subdue the robot mind for just a little bit. The robot has his uses. I don't want to have deep focus concentration on everything I do daily. When I go to the refrigerator, I don't want to have to ponder the meaning of water as I get a drink. But at times I want to alter my consciousness so I can alter, A-L-T-A-R, and explore some of this mystery of why some of my Celtic ancestors 2,000 years ago created this cauldron, and it was a cauldron, it was a giant bowl with this image on it. I would love to get into the mind of the creator of the Gun Distraught Cauldron. It could have been a woman. It doesn't necessarily have to have been a man. I don't know. Of course we don't know. But obviously the person who created this felt a deep relationship with nature, with the mysteries, the joy, the beauty of nature. And I have found that in my spiritual path. And I hope whatever your spiritual path is, that it brings you ecstatic joy and wisdom, and that during our time here walking upon earth, that it makes your walk much more better, worthy, and full of joy. Thank you for listening. Take care.